2025年12月29日，白银市值在盘中暂短的超过半导体巨头英伟达，创下了历史性时刻。这一贵金属跃居全球第二大最具价值资产，仅次于黄金。当日银价一度是触及了每盎司83.62美元的盘中高位，随后因为大量获利了结而大幅回落。根据彭博社的消息显示，白银的地面总估值在早盘当中攀升至4.7万亿美元，以略微优势超过英伟达的4.6万亿美元的市值。但是黄金仍然是以31.5万亿美元的价值保持全球最具价值的资产地位。然而，这次市值交叉标志着现代金融史上首次出现大宗商品在全球资产排名当中超越顶级科技公司的现象。今天，资深的大宗商品专家施耐德剖析银价推动的真正的动因，分析银价是否会面临大幅度的盘整，以及如果您没有赶上这班车，应该怎么办？另外，你知道吗？如果你有美元硬币，很可能还会为您带来小小的惊喜。在节目最后跟大家分享一个有趣又有意义的新内容，所以请您一定要看完整个视频。施耐德为我们解释的第一个问题就是，什么是真正动因，使银价大幅蹿升。
What you and I started talking about was, well, it's time to look at silver because of that gold-silver ratio. And I saw that it was unsustainable. Not to mention that the demand for silver was picking up, not only as central banks were switching from buying gold to silver, but that the physical number of silver is in deficit to the tune of 95 million ounces in 2025. And we know silver has some real industrial use, right? So it's for AI data centers and EVs in particular. You cannot do these without silver, number one. And number two is that we have a situation where it's not so easy to mine for silver. And from an inflation standpoint, once that silver-gold ratio starts to drop in favor more of silver, which is about 60, when you and I talked, it was about 95, which means gold was 95 times the value of silver. Now it's only 60 times. In 1980, it was down to 20. So do we have upside in silver based on all these factors and the fact that it's now a critical mineral? Yes, we certainly have more upside. As we're getting into 2026, we certainly have reasons to believe that things could get weird, for lack of a better word, partly because of good old Chinese astrology, right? We're entering the year of the Yang fire horse. And the way the elements have set up for this year, it's a 60-year cycle of which we have not seen anything like this since 1966. But the prediction is that we're going to have a volatile year. There are going to be bold innovations, but there definitely will also be some disruption. And that's where gold comes in, and possibly silver. And I think raw materials are going to shine. And according to the prediction by Raymond Lowe, precious metals in a Yang fire year go up even more. Whether it's China or the US or Russia or Australia or Dubai, the Middle East, whatever country you look at in the world, all in the same competition to try to keep up with AI, they all need silver. So some people are predicting, $300 an ounce silver. We got to 75, which was my target that I had mentioned to you when we talked last time. We surpassed it. And what's so interesting right now is the divergence between paper silver and physical silver. If you look out at the Southeast and Asia and Dubai and Australia and Russia, it's north of $89 an ounce for silver. In Dubai, the highest recorded right now, $95 an ounce. Here in the United States, because of the margin restrictions that have been put on silver, right now it dropped from $81 down to $75, but I do not believe that's sustainable. I think what we're seeing here is the future outside of the U.S. and the inevitability that silver has to now not only surpass my $75 target, maybe even surpass $85, and possibly next stop where we can take a pause and reset and look would be $100 an ounce. if you look at the March silver futures contract, right? If the big down bar that we saw on Monday, December 29th in the US, is any kind of a sign of a top, we would have to see a close either today, which is December 30th, or the 31st, which really basically we can sum that up by saying the end of December, we would have to see a close under that bar, which would be under $70.21. Then maybe we would have some kind of a start of a correction. However, if we don't, we can just notch that one day up to a bunch of week longs getting out based on the margin calls, and everything will resume because of all the fundamentals that we just mentioned. The other point I want to make is the last two times we saw those types of parabolic moves that margin requirements raised, and that was the top, was 1980 and 2011. However, we are not in 1980 and we are not in 2011 because we have a thing called AI, right? And we have EVs, which we did not have back then. So the demand is real, which was why if I had to choose a side, I would choose the size of not much of a correction, or if we get one, you're lucky because it's another buy opportunity, and still longer term into 2026, much higher prices in store. In terms of taking a profit, although I've taken a profit, basically what I'm doing right now is I'm using a wide enough trailing stop so that if this is the top, I will get out and I will be protected, right? So as I said, if it breaks down under $70 an ounce by the end of December, which we know is nigh, then I will take my profit. I've been long for a long time, and that's that. And I will wait for another opportunity, possibly a move closer back down to around $60 an ounce. However, if I don't get stopped out, right, what if I don't ever have any silver and I want to get in now? Well, interestingly enough, if you are in the US or by any chance have US coins that have been minted before 1964, like a nickel, a dime, a quarter, a $50, those were all made out of silver. So even though not too long ago, a quarter was just a quarter and a nickel was just a nickel, if they are silver, they are already worth more. And I would hold on to those coins because it's possible that a simple 25-cent quarter minted before 64 could be at some point worth $30 to $35 per quarter. So it's not going to get you rich, but at least it's kind of like a fun way to have some exposure to silver.
Not only are semiconductor stocks soaring, but they are like totally driving the market. Punch it!
I had created these characters in 2015 as cartoons, as two-dimensional, straight-up cartoons, and they're my economic modern family. And what I had discovered as I switched from commodities to stocks was that the way to really gauge how the environment of not just the market, but also the U.S. economy was doing, was to study these few sectors. So it was Grandpa Russell 2000. I made him my grandpa.
Present 2,000 small-cap, publicly traded U.S. companies.
And that's based on the ETF IWM, right? Then there was Granny Retail.
Granny Retail. And I represent the consumer retail sector of the economic modern family.
That's the consumer. Sister Semiconductors, that's the semiconductor space. The transportation, regional banks, biotechnology, and then more recently we added cryptocurrency. And so each one of them, for me to remember, because I was a special education teacher at one point, so in order to teach kids how to remember things, they relate to visuals, they relate to stories. I created actual real characters. So fast forward to 2025, because of AI, we are now animating them and bringing them to life as a financial literacy.
The economic fam, guiding the scene from the streets to the screens.